What's up, guys? How's it going? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Bailey Canning. I'm an independent marketing strategist, and it's September, fall is in the air, and you know what that means. It means we're back with the blazer. But anyway, on to today's topic of conversation. I wanted to talk about when it makes sense not to use Webflow, because if you've been following this channel for any length of time, you know I'm using Webflow for all my website project builds. However, there are many times where I'll be talking to prospective clients or just friends and family members who are looking to start up a business, and I'm learning more about what they're trying to do. And then while I am predisposed to recommending Webflow, oftentimes it actually doesn't make sense. So in today's video, I'm going to break down 5 reasons why you may not want to use Webflow. We'll cover all the different scenarios of whether you're a business owner trying to start up a business from scratch and you're on a lean budget and you don't have a whole lot of technical skills. Maybe there's other website platforms that are going to be better for you in that case. I'll also be touching upon if you're a designer or developer or even a marketing person that knows enough to be dangerous with design and development, when it makes sense maybe that you don't want to use Webflow either. Feel free to skip around timestamps in this video if you see something that's going to be more relevant to you. But before we get into the main topic of conversation today, first we got to take care of the housekeeping. So if you're interested in web design, branding, digital marketing, definitely subscribe to my channel because, like I said, I am an independent marketing strategist. I put out at least one video per week covering one of those topics. I would love for you to subscribe. All right, so now without any further ado, let's get into today's video. So if you're a web developer and you know how to code, or you have experience with other website platforms for building websites such as WordPress, which is probably the biggest alternative to Webflow, in the software community as a whole, but also this web development space, there's always a very big debate between open source and closed source tools. Basically, it is the Apple versus Android argument. So to give a quick analogy here, Apple, the iOS system, is a closed source system. So that means Apple owns it, only Apple can tinker with it, and you as a user of those software products, you only are able to customize it to the ability that Apple lets you. So you just don't have full control of the operating system. Now, a open source system is where whoever is developing the software basically gives out the code for free, and then other developers, companies can go in and take that existing code and then build upon it or change it up, and then even individuals can do the same as well. So for example, that is how the Android model works, where Google puts out the Android operating system, and then other phone providers like Samsung or OnePlus can take that and then change it up to their needs and then launch it themselves. To bring this analogy into the web design space here, a tool like WordPress is completely open source. So WordPress provides the open source CMS software, and then plugin developers or page builders can go into that CMS and then build upon it. So you just have a lot more freedom and flexibility, whereas Webflow is built on the Apple model. So basically the Webflow page builder and CMS and designer are developed by Webflow, and then all the features and functionality you're able to tap into are officially licensed by Webflow. However, you don't have the ability to just like download the root code of Webflow and then build your own page builder upon it. Ultimately, you're gonna have to come to your own conclusion. And the reason why I bring this up is that there's many people in the web development space that like the idea of Webflow. They'll concede that the designer is like the best in the business. However, they just can't get around the closed source ecosystem. And I totally understand that argument. I'm really not here to convert people. I think there's pros and cons to both, quite frankly. But personally for me, I have just come down on the Apple model here because one, Webflow just has a lot less bugs, which is something that you'll just find generally in closed source software. It just works better. While proponents of WordPress will say that they're not locked in, ultimately though, I think if you're picking out page builders, for example, Oxygen Builder, or you're picking out certain plugins, if something goes wrong with those plugins, or the developer just like closes up shop one day, you're in the same situation you would have been with a closed source ecosystem anyway. So I think there's a lot more gray area than proponents of the open source model would like to admit. However, like I said, I'm not here to convert people. Let's not make this into a religion or anything like that. Let's just use the tools we want to use and then call it a day. So just to wrap up this section here, if you're a fan of the open source model and you don't trust a private company like Webflow to properly maintain its software and provide a great user experience over the long run, you're probably not going to want to go with Webflow. Now, the second reason why you wouldn't want to choose Webflow for your project would be if you don't know how to code, or you don't at least have a theoretical understanding of HTML, CSS, and some basic JavaScript. Technically, Webflow is a low code or even no code tool. While you don't need to know how to code within the Webflow visual designer, although you can write custom code within it, you can't just dive into Webflow and start building websites if you don't have any experience with things like UI and UX design or fundamental theories of how like the web works in terms of the design of the web and responsiveness and code itself. Webflow is a technical tool. You do need to have a technical background across all the aforementioned areas. It differs in that way from other low-code website builders like Wix or Squarespace, where with those tools, you don't need to know how to code and you don't need any experience before you can start building. But the trade-off here, though, is that those tools, like I mentioned, Wix and Squarespace, and even some of the more basic WordPress page builders like Elementor, for example, they're all based on templates. So you have a lot of predefined layouts and just very generic looking sections that can be customized a bit, but ultimately you're locked into a design box. Whereas Webflow, the trade-off is you have complete design freedom to develop anything possible on the web. You can also tap into some really cool animations and effects. However, you do need to know how to code. So that's a trade-off. It is for a much more technical user base. If you're a business owner that's trying to build their brand from scratch and you need a functional website up and running, if you can't afford to hire a Webflow developer such as myself, then I would recommend going probably the Squarespace route because they have the most nice looking templates to just quickly get a V1 website up and running. And then when you're ready to invest in a bigger, more robust website, then you'd probably want to consider hiring someone to build a Webflow site for yourself. Whether you're a hobbyist or a business owner, I really wouldn't recommend Webflow if you don't have any code experience and you haven't taken at least a couple of online courses in terms of how to build websites, manage a CMS, all that's fun stuff. It's a professional tool meant for professional users. Real quick, if you're getting value out of this video and you would like to pick my brain on an upcoming website project, whether you plan to use Webflow or maybe even something else entirely, definitely feel free to book a free strategy call with me. There's a link in the description of this video where you can learn more about that. But long story short, I will take the time to learn about your company's background, its competitors, what your current marketing strategy looks like, where it's succeeding and where it's failing. And then based on everything you tell me, I will help you outline a website and digital marketing game plan in order to get more traffic to your website and start generating some leads, and then ultimately taking those leads and turning them into paying clients. So if you want to learn a little bit more about what that strategy call entails, check out the link in the description. It's right at the top here. And without further ado, let's get back into the video. Sticking with the business owners on this one, I would recommend using Webflow if you're on a very tight marketing budget and you're just getting started out and you really need to keep things on the cheap for at least this first interim period as you're getting started. One of my Webflow websites just needs to be renewed for a year. I'm on the CMS plan, and the total cost to renew for a year was $276. So it's nearly $300 a year if you want to have the CMS plan, which is what you really need if you're going to be using the website to host content like videos or blogs or podcasts, or even dynamic content. So you should really be looking at like $300 a year for your Webflow site minimum. And while I will say I recently did a video ranking the different website builders, I'll link this up here, but Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, Webflow, and Framer, and they're all expensive. To give a bit of a car analogy here, you can basically think of Webflow as like the BMW in the car market, where tools like Wix and Squarespace are more of like the Honda or the Toyota, for example. It's definitely fair to say that Webflow is like a luxury tool. So if your business cannot afford that, that's totally understandable. So if budget is of an issue, I would probably recommend against. The next reason why I would recommend against using Webflow is if you have a e-commerce business or your business sells more than 10 or so products online, and you may or may not need to tap into more advanced functionality when it comes to things like payment processing or product customization, user accounts, things of that nature. Because while Webflow does have built-in e-commerce functionality, quite honestly, it's very basic. You don't have a whole lot of ability to customize things, especially in terms of the back-end technical features that you may need. And also, it's very expensive. So the way I've settled upon this when it comes to Webflow is that it's really best for high-end professional service companies. It's really just not meant, however, to be a robust e-com platform. A few months ago, I had a client come to me for a e-commerce website. I'd actually already built their website on Webflow. And after learning more about everything they needed in terms of technical customization and ability, there were a lot of back-end integrations that were needed here. I ultimately advised them to instead build the online store on a subdomain, and that subdomain is hosted via Shopify. And I'd recommend, if you are in the e-commerce space, just go with Shopify. It is by far the best platform. It's super easy to set up, but there's also a huge marketplace that's going to let you tap into a bunch of advanced custom functionality if you need it. Shopify is great because everything you need to launch an online store is right in the box. If you do go the Shopify route, I would recommend spending like $200 to $300 on a super nice theme because that design value is going to go a long way. I'm just not a huge fan of the Webflow e-commerce system. It's very expensive. They haven't even been focusing on it a lot, so it really seems like it's gone by the wayside. So if you're an e-commerce business, or you're a business that's looking to sell more than 10 products online, I would recommend against Webflow. The final reason why I would recommend against Webflow in certain circumstances would be if your company has a very large content resource base. So this is going to be primarily like for media companies. For example, let's take an outlet like The Verge, which I love to check out for technology news. They probably have tens of thousands, if not even hundreds of thousands of articles in the back end. Each of those are going to be what Webflow would consider a CMS item. So basically, if you're a media outlet type of a website and you're looking to have a huge blog or a huge video library, we're talking about tens of thousands of pieces of content. The Webflow pricing plans all cap those CMS items. On the CMS plan, you get 2,000 items, so that would be like 2,000 blog articles, for example. On the business plan, you get 10,000 items, but then if you are over those 10,000 items, then you need to contact Webflow for enterprise pricing, which can get very expensive very fast. I believe in that circumstance, they give you a custom price quote based on your needs. So for most businesses, even if you're producing weekly content, which is awesome, you're probably not going to ever run into any of those issues, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if you're like a big media outlet, then it's probably not going to be a very viable option. Within those CMS limits, there's also limits in the amount of CMS fields you can have within a CMS collection. They recently upgraded it from 30 to 60, which was very good because I had some clients who were really pushing up against that 30 CMS field limit. I would recommend against Webflow for content heavy websites, for media outlet type of brands online. But for most businesses, this isn't going to be a problem. All right, guys, so that is the video for today. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. And I hope that if you identify or find yourself in one of the scenarios I laid out, then you're going to be able to avoid yourself a lot of time, stress, heartache, whatever you want to call it, and use a website platform that's going to be better suited for your particular needs. And also, I just thought this was an important video to make because if you look at a lot of the past videos I made, it's all about how Webflow is awesome. And I do think it is the best overall website builder for a professional service-based business, which is the primary types of clients that I work with. However, again, it's not the best website platform for every single use case. For example, e-commerce businesses or product businesses, I would basically rule it out right from the start. I just think it's very important to understand that whatever tool you choose is what needs to be best for the job at hand. So Webflow is not going to be the best website builder for every single website out there, and it's totally cool. And I also think it's just important to be open-minded, to keep yourself on the lookout for other website platforms and tools that come out. For example, I didn't even mention it, there is this now alternative to Webflow. It's like an open source version of Webflow. I believe it's called VS Studio or Visual Studio, but it's very interesting looking. They don't have a lot of like important features like the animations and effects so far, but it does integrate with things like the Rayloom library. It does have a very similar designer like interface, although it looks a bit more outdated. But again, with a tool like that, there are no CMS limits, there are no bandwidth limits. You can host it anywhere you want. That's why I think it's so good that there's competition in the space, because if Webflow drops the ball on something, there's going to be competitors that take it and run with it. Thank you for watching. Definitely subscribe because I'm going to be putting out a lot more content all about, website builder tools. Let me know if there's any tools or website platforms you want me to take a look at. I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.